Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over the best simple 1v1 starts for build battles in Fortnite. A few weeks ago, I uploaded a video titled something along the lines of how to win more 1v1s in Fortnite, and one of the most crucial things I talked about in that video was actually the importance of having a really effective go-to starting move or moves. People are so good at building and specifically getting high ground nowadays that if you pause for even a split second, it's over. Also, if you use an inefficient starting move, you might still lose the battle for high ground even if you do it perfectly. So the purpose of this video is to showcase 6 or 7 simple and effective 1v1 starts that you can learn and use. I'm going to show them in the setting of like an imaginary creative mode 1v1, but just be aware that all of these can and will be used fairly frequently in real games as well. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so the first 1v1 start I want to show is one I either use the most or second most, and I actually first saw it a few months ago from Plowlism. So you want to start by 90ing until you're facing towards the enemy, and then you place a ramp and connect a cone to the top of it. Once you've done that, you want to place a wall in front of you and then just crank 2 to 3 more 90s straight up in the air for high ground. And then once you finish that second set of 90s, if you see that you're higher up than the enemy, that's when you try to build towards them and make some kind of offensive play. So there's 2 reasons why you want to place that ramp and cone towards the enemy. First off, if you can 90 fast enough and get that ramp cone down really quickly, it has a very solid chance to block the enemy from ramping or building directly over you. The other reason is that it may trick the enemy into thinking that you're trying to make some sort of offensive play towards them. So if they pause for even a split second to pre-aim that cone, you're going to leave them in the dust with your second set of 90s. And quick spoiler, you're going to see that ramp cone combo in most 1v1 starts out there because it's so simple and effective. The next start is one that I really like to use when I want to get height right off the bat, but also be really protected while doing so. Again, the start for this one is very similar to the last one, which I think is a good thing because it keeps your opponent guessing. You start off by doing 90s until you're facing them, then you place the floor and cone outwards for protection. From there, you want to do 2 more 90s so that you're now facing away from the enemy, then look back and do sort of a half Thwifo cone, ramp out once, and then keep cranking 90s until you're confident that you have high ground. So I really like this one because you're pretty much going as fast as someone just cranking a million 90s off the rip, but you're way more protected because of the 2 cones you place. So I feel like this is a start that'll be effective against any type of player. If you're fighting an infinite 90 cranker, you still have a really decent chance to beat them to high ground if you can do this efficiently. But on the flip side, if you're fighting someone who only does 2 90s and then immediately starts ramping towards you trying to play offensive, you're protected pretty much the entire time as you're going up. Another variation with the same start as the last 2 is one you want to use when you're trying to play more aggressively and basically try to ramp over the opponent instead of just beating them to high ground. You start off with the double 90 and then ramp cone outward, then you do 1 more 90 so that you're now equal height with the cone. From there, you want to place a wall on the far side of the cone towards the enemy, and then place another wall with a ramp connected to it on the right side of the first wall you placed. From there, you should be good to ramp straight up and over your opponent. So fairly self-explanatory why that works if you paid attention to the last ones. The initial cone and then 2 walls you place in front should give you piece control over your opponent that prevents them from building. And then because of that, you should be able to ramp over them, and then you can either edit down on them if you're trying to play super aggressive or just take high ground. Both are good options. Moving on to our next 1v1 start, this is a really simple one that I use when I'm trying to get height right off the rip, but I also want to play somewhat aggressively as well. All you want to do is start off the same way with the 90s until you're facing the enemy and then ramp cone outwards. But this time, what you want to do is run up towards the cone and do an elevated forward side jump. Once you've done that, you either want to crank one more 90 to where you're facing towards the right now, but you still have a good view of the enemy so you can make some sort of offensive play, or you can just spam 90s if you want to make sure that you secure high ground. A word of caution here though, if you choose to spam 90s from this point, you're actually going to end up turning your back to the enemy while not really being protected at all, so I only do that if I know the enemy isn't going to go on the offensive at all. The other variation you can do of this one is a protected forward side jump instead of a regular one. This doesn't really make a huge difference, but a little extra protection for stuff like this can definitely help. And I believe that the double 90 protected forward side jump was one of the main starts that Clix used a few months ago and maybe even does now. Our next 1v1 start is one that I think is probably a little more viable in real games, but it could still definitely work in creative 1v1s against a certain type of player. It's ridiculously simple really. All you need to do is start by cranking no jump 90s until you're facing the enemy, and then you just want to ramp forward to try to block them off. So the reason why this is an interesting little start concept is because no jump 90s, if done correctly, are actually slightly faster than regular 90s. So as long as you don't mess them up, you actually create enough of a time advantage over your opponent to then branch out and ramp over them. The reason why this is actually really effective in regular games is because most people don't even really have a 1v1 start. They basically just crank like 5+ 90s in a row, and then once they think they have high ground, they'll maybe try to make some sort of offensive play. So this start does leave you a little more exposed once you build outwards, since you're only placing ramps on their own, but that won't be a problem at all if your enemy doesn't try to make any sort of play other than 90ing straight up. And the same thing applies to creative 1v1s as well. This is a great way to quickly finish a fight against your friend who isn't really that great at the game, so he just kind of spams a million 90s in a row and then sits on high ground. With this, you can block him off, edit down on him, and hopefully kill him before he even understands what just happened. The final 1v1 start I want to share in this video is actually the one I showed in the How to Win 1v1s video, just in case you missed it or forgot. This is probably my personal favorite 1v1 start, and the only negative is that it does require a double edit, so it might not be viable for everyone, but as long as you can do that, it's ridiculously simple. So what you're going to do is start off by doing the 90s until you're facing the enemy, then you want to place the same outwards ramp cone that we've used in pretty much every 1v1 start so far, but with this one, you're also going to want to place a floor as well. From there, you simply want to sprint up the ramp and edit through both structures. Then you're good to keep 90ing, ramping up, or whatever else you want to do to get high ground. So this is another interesting option that builds off the same start as most of the other 1v1 starts I've shown. This one at first uses the cone as more of a defensive tool to protect you and gain piece control, but then you turn it into somewhat of an offensive weapon by editing through it and going towards your enemy. And honestly, now that I think about it, if you can't double edit, I guess you could just do the same start with a single cone instead of a floor cone, but just be aware that it'll give you less cover because once you edit the cone, it won't be connected to anything and therefore it'll disappear. So that covers all the 1v1 starts that I wanted to showcase in this video. Now a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, how many of these starts should I learn? Do I need to know all of them? I think if you're mostly a regular Battle Royale player, as long as you have 1 to 2 starts that you're really comfortable with, that should probably be enough. Since you're fighting different players every time in a Battle Royale environment, it's not like they're gonna know the start that you normally use, so you can kind of repeat it. But if you watch this video with the intent of mainly using these starts in creative 1v1s, I think you should probably have more like 3 to 4 in your arsenal. If you 1v1 a good player, they're gonna be able to counter your starts if you reuse them, so if you mix it up, especially with most of these having the exact same initial piece placement, you'll be in a really good spot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down down the comment section below. Whenever you're playing creative 1v1s or even just fighting a regular 1v1 in Battle Royale, what is your personal go-to starting move? It doesn't even have to be one that I covered in this video. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.